Okay, so let's get started. Hello and welcome. Today we'll be talking about Demodam, Common Ground Showcase website, and this is the kickoff session. Over 70 people signed up for today. That's excellent. I'm really glad that there's so much interest in this initiative. I would please ask you to join the Slack channel for the chat. We'll be using the Slack channel for this project in general. So please take the opportunity to join the Slack channel via the message I posted in the chat. Hopefully this call will be recorded, and I say hopefully because we had some technical issues. So if somebody could press record, then we can look at the presentation afterwards for people who couldn't make it today. But first of all, let me start with a short introduction about what we're going to do today. My name is Edo Plantinga. I currently work for Dimpact as a project manager. If somebody could please press mute, I hear some noise coming in. So today we'll be talking about Demodam, which is a showcase website for common ground components, open source common ground components that are made especially for municipalities to develop their online digital services. I included a screenshot of what Demodam will pretty much look like, which is just any old municipality, a website of a municipality, but all the services there, of course, are you can use without logging in or whatever, just to try all the different digital services. You can actually take a look at what it will look like at zuidrecht.nl, which is pretty much the precursor of Demodam. And the main difference is that Demodam will be a public-private initiative, and Demodam was built by one of the suppliers in the Common Ground ecosystem, Conduction. So this Demodam will be the public-private collaboration between hopefully a lot of companies in the ecosystem and also the government organizations involved in the ecosystem. So what we'll do today is we'll talk about why Demodam, what's the use of, what are our goals we hope to achieve. We hope to develop some mutual understanding of the different stakeholders involved. There's many stakeholders, many different companies, many different government organizations involved, and we hope to get to know each other a little bit better. After that, we'll talk about the governance. Of course, we need this mutual understanding to make some meaningful, have some meaningful discussions about the governance of this whole initiative. I think the governance of Demodam will be closely related to the governance of the Common Ground ecosystem in general. And we'll talk about how we can make this work together, and basically what roles do everybody want to have, and what else do we need to get this thing off the ground. Okay, so today, first of all, I'll hold a short introduction. We've already started, of course. Then we'll do a short value proposition workshop to gain some understanding of the different stakeholders involved and their pains and gains. And then I'll pass it over to Alba and Jan of the Foundation for Public Code. They will introduce themselves later on in this session, and also the Foundation for Public Code, of course. And then we'll have either two parallel sessions with a governance exercise, and maybe an open space session if people want to talk about stuff that is outside of the scope of the governance exercise. We'll see what happens. And then Alba will discuss how we can make Demodam a great success together. And then we'll talk about the next steps. But just as a small pointer, there will be a couple of sessions that we've planned after this. There will be a post kickoff session in a week from now to talk about all the stuff that we couldn't discuss today. We have asked for a budget of the Ministry of Interior Affairs of 150,000 euros, which hopefully will be awarded somewhere in June, but maybe not. we're not dependent on this budget, but it would be of great help. And then we'll have a hackathon onboarding session the 24th of June, and the first Demodam hackathon at the 5th until the 9th of July. But we'll talk about that later. Okay, so a little bit about Common Ground. Common Ground, as many of you will know, is a movement or a vision of how how an open source ecosystem could function for software to develop digital services for municipalities in the Netherlands. And basically, this is the current situation where there's a lot of siloed development, a lot of software that doesn't communicate amongst each other, and it's a big spaghetti mess. Basically, I won't get into the details here. You can find it on commonground.nl if you want to learn more about it. But basically, what the idea is, and this is just one perspective, but what we're trying to do is develop an app store, if you like, for municipalities with open source digital services consisting of reusable open source components. So basically an app store of reusable software that can interact. This is just one perspective, obviously, but this is the perspective that's helpful for today. I would like to ask you today. We'll be using a Miro board quite extensively. And I would like to ask you today to start thinking about two questions right now. You can leave these suggestions at the Miro board. If somebody could post the link, maybe Jan or Alba could post a link in the chat to the Miro board. There we are. And I would like to ask you to think about what do you feel we need to talk about today, and what do you hope to achieve with Demodam personally? And we'll get back to all those points later on. And if we don't, we'll have another session to talk about it in a week from now. Okay, cool. I'll continue the presentation now, and while you figure out how to use Miro, I would like to say a special thank you for a couple of people that have been involved so far. First of all, Conduction, who have built it's the company who have built Zuidrecht, the precursor to Demodam. And they have generously donated the domain name of Demodam to the community, and in general have been very helpful in making this session today happen as well. So a big thank you to them. Also, a shout out to Dimpact and We Go For It. Those are the two government organizations. I'm personally working for Dimpact at the moment. Two government organizations that applied for the budget of the Ministry of Interior Affairs and will take care of the hosting of this whole initiative. And then, of course, the Foundation for Public Code. We'll hear more about the foundation in a couple of minutes. And of course, everybody else in creating in the Common Ground movement, because of course, as always in open source, we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. So thank you all very much for all this. So next up, why Demodam? And before we can really understand what we're hoping to achieve here at the moment, let's dive into some of the challenges that I see coming in the Common Ground ecosystem. As a small disclaimer, I'm relatively new to the ecosystem since November last year, so that's less than half a year. And most of these observations are well, my personal view. So I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer at the moment. But in my view, there's a couple of things that are happening in the ecosystem that are working really quite well. We see a lot of very rapid development of open source components and services happening in the ecosystem. There's a lot of effort, and it's going really quite quickly at the moment. The 5-layer model of Common Ground is also quite widely accepted. I get the idea. And I think the Haven infrastructure, I won't get into the details about what it is, but for the people that know what it is, I think it offers a very stable base to develop an ecosystem like this. So I think a couple of things are going really quite well. But there's also a number of challenges that I see coming. Um, First of all, what I notice is that many of the components are developed in relative isolation. So there's a lot of projects that are supposed to be working together, but the integration of the different projects and the communication between different projects still needs some work, which of course makes sense in this stage of the growth of the ecosystem. But still, that's something we need to look into. And I think a related point is that the stability of the interoperability of all the different apps is still to be proven. One of the main challenges I also see is the integration layers, like how the apps communicate with each other, is still considered a pilot. Analytics for those who know. The quality of the components still vary. I see some projects are really have a user-centered focus, for example, and for other projects you don't really see that just yet. I think the overview of apps that are available is still, well, it could be a lot better. I believe personally. We don't really have a common design language just yet, or not a design system that everybody's using just yet, which is a problem from a user perspective, from the citizens, of course. And I think the governance of the platform and the app ecosystem needs some attention as well. And finally, the business model for app builders is still a bit unclear, because we're switching from a license model, a closed source model, to an open source model, and we're still figuring out, and a lot of companies are still figuring out what this will mean for them in the long run. So I don't want to depress you too much, but I think there's a fair bit of things that still need some attention. But before moving to the possible solutions, I would like to discuss a little bit of some theory very briefly, because I think this can be really helpful in grounding the stuff that we're trying to achieve with the Demodam in some theory. And this is the platform business model, where there's a platform that interacts with several apps, and the platform is usually how do you say it, maintained by a single company. For example, we have the Android ecosystem, which is where the operating system is maintained mainly by Google, and the App Store is maintained by Google. And but the most value in such an ecosystem is delivered by the app builders that can operate relatively independently from Google. They don't need their permission to do a lot of stuff. They just need to interact with the platform every now and then. So this is actually quite a well-known business model these days, and this is also the business model that's been driving all the multi-billion-dollar companies like Google and Facebook, etc. And so it's a very powerful business model, and actually the theory behind this is quite well understood. There's this book, Platform Ecosystems, that I can highly recommend, which is very useful for understanding what we're doing with trying to do with Common Ground as well. And I used the Android ecosystem as an example of this business model, because it's quite well known. But maybe an even better example for those that know it would be the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, for example. That also follows a very similar business model or organizational model, I should probably say, using open source components and trying to collaborate in that way. It's a very powerful business model. I think it's an interesting way of looking at the Common Ground ecosystem as well. Yeah, so what's to be gained by such a platform ecosystem? Of course, for the app developers, it means that you don't have to spend a lot of time on commodity stuff like accessing data, security concerns, etc., etc. So in the Android example, you don't have to worry about having an internet connection or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that's readily available just by using the Google and the Android API. So this allows app developers, like many of you here in this call, to focus more on the innovation and focus more on your core business, your specialty, your own niche in the ecosystem, so you can deliver more value and worry less about all the plumbing concerns. And of course, also the App Store can help with the marketing of whatever you have built. So looking at Common Ground as a platform as well, just to clarify a little bit what I consider to be the part of the core platform, and not so much part of the app developers. I won't get into details here, but I think Haven, the hosting standard, is part of the platform. Analytics is part of the platform, so the way that apps can communicate amongst each other. The componentencatalogus, which is the App Store, you can look at it as an App Store. I think it's part of the platform, and the app quality standards should also be part of the platform. And well, maybe I'm still not sure if we should include this, but the data can also be part of the platform. Okay, of course, in our case, the ecosystem is a little bit more complicated than this, because the apps actually need to communicate amongst each other. Okay. So enter Demodam. Again, you can have a sneak preview at zuidrecht.nl. So what does Demodam bring to the table? So first of all, it's a showcase of shiny apps. How do they work? How do they integrate? Etc. Etc. It can serve as a sandbox for developers, shielded from legacy systems. We can learn how to collaborate amongst suppliers, but also governments. It adds some proof for the integration layer of NLX. We can set the standards together when we say a component is ready for production. And last but not least, we can try out the governance for the Common Ground ecosystem in general. So in summary, Demodam can help increase the maturity of the ecosystem. Well, there's a lot of gains to be held by the municipality as well. I'll skip this because we're running out of time a little bit, and we'll go over this in the next sessions when we look at the stakeholders. But also for the municipalities, there's a lot to be gained. So how can Demodam help solve these problems that I've just discussed? Well, it can help us develop the apps in a stable environment where they can actually communicate amongst each other. So that helps solve the points 1 and 2. And also we can try out this integration layer of analytics a lot more. We can collaboratively set the criteria for the quality of the components. It can help us improve the overview of the apps that are available. We're hoping to collaborate with the NL design system as well in the first hackathon. So that will help solve that problem. And of course, we'll talk elaborately about the governance in this session today. And hopefully it will also allow us to get some more feeling about the business models involved in this. Okay, so why did we want to involve the Foundation for Public Code in all this? Well, basically, they're a neutral party, so it can help us solve. They have an international perspective, which will also be helpful at some stage. Maintainers of the Standard for Public Code. Won't get into detail right now, and I think they really do an awesome job. So I'm really happy that they're willing to collaborate on this. Personally, why I think Demodam is such an awesome idea. I think it will help us learn by doing, so we don't have to talk and do a lot of PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. It will give us an easy sandbox and help us to figure out how to work together. It can help us appreciate the different roles and how we can help make this work together. I think most of the goals around the different stakeholders, they align quite well. I think everybody benefits from having such an initiative as Demodam. And to me, it's the first time we can actually see the Common Ground vision really come alive. And I think there's a lot of people involved, especially the municipalities, that don't really know what's happening in the common ground ecosystem, and I think Demodam can easily show them that there's actually a lot of value being created at the moment at a very high pace. And this is the first time that such an ecosystem is even technically feasible, because now we have this Haven standard as a stable base based on a Kubernetes software, which allows us to achieve this vision of an app store of open source components for the first time in history. How about that? And I think the potential is huge. The scope could be much broader than just municipalities. Could also be interesting for other parts of the government, maybe even healthcare, but also internationally. I think it's really interesting what the common ground ecosystem is hoping to achieve. So yeah, I think it's really a huge opportunity for all involved here.